Welcome back, everyone, to the Retro Chat podcast. Andy here. Joining me, as always, is my guest at this time. If you're going to talk about a Masters of the Universe, you have to talk with the head honcho, the super fan, the man with the many faces, the man at arms,
Oh dear.
the man who's always Skeletor on the, this intro is terrible. It's Chris Finn. How you doing, sir?
Hello. It started off well and then it just went down there. It's like a Wind Raider just being shot in the back and then just went straight down.
You know, I thought the man-y faces was quite
Yeah, that
good,
was
because
great. And
man-y
then it
faces
just
in
went,
your
yeah.
okay. Look, it's been a long day, and this is the second attempt at recording this because I forgot to press record.
Yes, I noticed that because like, he went recording started. It's like that would have been fun doing all that. And it's like it didn't record. We have to do it all again.
Yeah. What do you think of the new intro?
It's very snazzy. Very snazzy.
Ah,
It goes right up
good.
there with like Transformers and stuff as well. So yeah, very good.
It's much better than the blue and the yellow, isn't it? You know,
I think it's like the third or fourth intro you've had in your short time here as well, which is just like you just need to find your right one.
Yeah. Thank you. Right. So,
I told you, get you back, and there you go. So there we are.
You did.
Yep.
You did.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You did. Right. So what are we here for today? Well, this is Retro Chat. This is episode 10. And coming up on this edition, we are talking all about Revelation, Masters of the Universe. The first 5 episodes is dropped now on Netflix. Talk about polarizing views. We're going to be picking up on that in a minute. Chris, before we get going, though, what did you think? What did you think? Was it good or bad? That's the tagline. Was Revelations good or bad?
As a He-Man fan, from being a small child to being 43 years old, I had really high expectations going into this, and then obviously we watched the trailers and everything, and like many things, whenever we watch a trailer, the end product is different from the trailer. You know, look at Infinity War, whenever you see them all running and the Hulk's there, and we don't get that at the end of it. And the same with Rogue One with the TIE Fighter coming up at some stage. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been one of those things that I have watched a couple of times now. I'm picking up little bits and pieces that I never noticed beforehand. Is it He-Man and the Master Universe Revelation? No. Is it Tila Master Universe Revelation? No, it's Masters of the Universe Revelation. So there seems to be different stories to do with different characters as it goes along. It's not a case of it's just to do with He-Man and Skeletor. They're the main 2 characters, but we have other people around that, which we have in any other show. How many episodes of the classic Filmation cartoon or the 2002 one, which we both covered on the show, has Tila been a part of? So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and we'll get on to like voice casting and everything like that later on. But for me, once I'd finished watching it, I was left satisfied. I wasn't, I must go on the internet and express my hatred and everything like that for it. It wasn't like that at all. And it seems to be that a lot of people now are just using excuses for, women being part of this and all that there. And it's like, well, it seems to be happening more and more, with things. And that's just the world we live in. The world we live in now is different from like 40 years ago, whenever the Filmation cartoon was around. But I think that if Lou Scheimer was doing Filmation now, he would kind of had that kind of same thing as we must have this, we must have this, we must have this into it. And that's just the way it is.
I'm going to be a bit controversial here, but for me, He-Man has always been a real one-dimensional character. Right? He does the power sword. He says, I have the power. By the power of Grayskull, becomes He-Man, and then destroys everything in his path or defeats all the bad guys. Whereas this series, what we've seen in the first 5 episodes, is more of a rounding of the cast, of the ensemble, than we did in the entire 2 seasons of the 83 of the classic series. Duncan being thrown out of the King's Court because of the loss of Adam at that point, and the relationship between him and Tila, sacrificing Tila, going through a mental health journey in terms of being lied to for years by everybody, even Randor you felt sorry with to a degree, because Marlena had kept something deeply important about his son from him. So actually, you could, from a character perspective, you could get into the mind of where Tila was coming from in this journey that she was on. But I'm like you, I don't really give a damn if it's Tila. I couldn't give a damn if it was about Duncan or, you know, any of the characters, Orko, which we'll touch on in a minute, because that was a shock. It was Masters. It was about Grayskull. That's what the story was about. It was about protecting Grayskull at all costs, and actually what sort of magic got them into trouble, you know? And all these people that have come out and said they bait and switched us, they lied to us, they said it was He-Man, but it's not He-Man, and you killed He-Man off in the first episode. Brilliant. Did you see it coming? No.
I think that's the first time as well. I think that's the first time as well we've seen a real vulnerability to He-Man and to Adam as well. You know, like that we haven't seen the likes of this thing really happen before. And you know, don't forget, this is only the first half of it. We still have the other 5 episodes to go of this, you know, and there's so much outcry to do with what they've done wrong and everything like that. But at the end of the day, people are still talking about it. So, you know, some people will be like, oh, I didn't like this and I didn't like that. And that's great. And if you don't like something, that's fine. Not everyone's going to like the same thing. But the fact is that it's there now and it's part of Masters of the Universe. And that's part of that. It's part of the franchise now. Same way with like New Adventures, it's part of the franchise. But then a lot of people don't really care for it. And I think now just the internet seems to be where people will go just to complain about if they don't like something, they'll just be quick to do that. For me, I like it, like you, Andy. I loved it, and that's what we're here to talk about is what we enjoyed about it. So hopefully, while you're watching this, if you don't agree with someone we said, that's fine. But this is just our opinion of what we enjoyed in the show.
If you don't agree with us, that's absolutely great. And I want to hear from you if you don't. So you can do that if you're listening to us on Spotify or any of the podcast platforms by clicking on the voicemail link. And you can actually leave me a voicemail as long as it's clean.
Pleasant one, yeah.
As long as it's clean, because we are a family show, I will play it on the show next week. Okay? It's some sort of rebuttal. Social media at Retro Chat Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, at Retro Chat Pod on Twitter. Let me know what you think. And Chris and I'm sure, will take it upon ourselves to reply back to you and let you know where you're wrong, especially if you're dissing the show. No, we won't. Well, obviously, all feedback is great. And if you've got an opinion, that's what we're here for. We're not right. Chris isn't right. You guys are not right, but it's your opinion, and that's what matters, and that's what you want to share. All right, let's go to the animation style, because the animation style for this was incredible, wasn't it? We saw it on the teaser trailer. We saw it in the trailers, and then we saw it in the opening few minutes. And what I loved about the beginning of the show, beginning of episode 1, was that 80s montage of the classic characters and giving you the backstory about Adam and doing the famous intro that we've all known and love back from the 83 series in a different way, in a reimagined way, but setting the scene for where we were going. I mean, that was great.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't like about Netflix is that once you watch that once, it seemed to cut it off in the other episodes, and it's like, oh, no, I want to watch that. So I did enjoy that, you know, like because they used a lot of the art from like some of the like say the box of Castle Grayskull or the backs of some of the cards and things like that. So that was very different the way they used that, and it was just something different as well. You didn't have, you know, I'm Adam, Prince of Eternia, which he kind of says in episode 1 whenever he's hugging Tila, and he says that, and you're like, oh, you know, that's nice. But yeah, the intro was great, even though the fact is you should have just kept it on, you know, like because normally there's a skip intro button. And I was like, I wasn't going to hit that for any of them, but to just skip it anyway. I was like, the one time I don't want you to skip the intro, and you do it for me. Thanks, Netflix.
Yeah, I just like the option, like you, to go back and watch it without having to go back to episode 1 and then coming out and going back into episode 2 or whatever. Easy thing, find a way of downloading the intro, have it on your phone, and play it just before the episode starts.
It's probably found that on YouTube.
Yeah, easy. I mean, the other thing, and I know you're a big fan of this because I saw your post on Twitter the other day, was the soundtrack.
Oh yeah,
Bear McCreary.
I have the CD
Yeah.
here, which you can't see
Mhm.
if you're not watching on YouTube. So yeah, wasn't cheap by any stretch. That was 25 quid for that.
Wow.
But yeah, but the thing is that I think that's going to be something that'll skyrocket up, because even the Filmation one now is like worth quite a bit more. But yeah, it seemed to be like the music, the music, like whenever you hear Adam transforming, that seems to be like the Force theme, and you will hear that in certain different
Yeah.
pieces of the soundtrack as well. But I've been listening to it on Spotify, and just popping in the CD and the PlayStation every so often just to listen to as well. But yeah, like you said, the soundtrack, I've always been a big soundtrack fan. If I like it, I will buy it. But I really, really hope that they bring this out in vinyl. And he's kind of led little hints, like other physical media coming soon. So I would definitely get it on vinyl if it comes out.
I would imagine if I know my marketing and I don't, I would imagine they'll wait until the 10 episodes have been released and then do
Yeah,
this sort of double album and release it out
yeah,
on vinyl all in
yeah.
one.
Because it just says here, like volume one. So they'll probably bring out a volume two, and then the two of them sliced together. So yeah, I think you're probably right with that. So.
What did you think of the transformation scene? You touched on the music there. So the first time we saw Adam turn into He-Man with the classic "By the Power of Grayskull" and I have the power, and then Cringer getting turned into Battle Cat. It was
I
so faithful.
I got goosebumps, and but it's very different, because like it's like by the power and then a bit of a pause of Grayskull. It's not all fluid, and that's not by the power of Grayskull. It's by the power, and then you kind of hear the ting of the sword of Grayskull. But I love the way that they did it, and with Cringer like running away. A lot of people said we didn't see enough He-Man in this. We only saw Battle Cat once, and that
Yeah.
was with this. Like we see a couple of transformation sequences and stuff of various ones, but we only see Battle Cat once, really. But yeah, it was one of those ones that as soon as he said those words, I kind of got goosebumps on me, and especially at the start of the intro, whenever he says it's changed now from only 3 other people know his secret to 4 other people, and one of them being Cringer, which obviously we see a great deal of in a different kind of light in this one. But yeah, it's one that when I watch now, it's just again the music just really goes with it, and I think that's something that they've done from the original one to the 2002 one to this one, is that the
Yeah.
music with it just fit it perfectly. And it's the same with, because there is a track, the He-Man Transforms, which is basically like the intro music, but just very shortened.
Well, we'll talk about the characters in a minute. We'll talk about more about their development in a second. But what I want to ask you is a question which might be controversial. Who has voiced it better, John Irwin, Cam Clark, or Chris Wood? Because each of them have brought something different to the role of Adam and He-Man, and you're doing the transformation. But for me, as much as I know Chris Wood from Supergirl playing
Hmm.
Mon-El, um,
Yeah.
I was still a bit, I can't imagine this guy playing He-Man. But yet, instantly, when he came on screen as Adam and he was doing the initial Adam scenes with Teela, and then he transformed into He-Man, I instantly forgot it was Mon-El and just went, that's He-Man. That's now my He-Man of my generation. It's really weird.
Yeah. I think that as well. You've went somewhere, so whether you're loading something up or something, I'm confused.
I've just
Um,
made you full screen because I'm putting you on the spot now as to which one is the best
okay.
He-Man.
It's a different one, because obviously you've got 3 different ones, and each one is a different representation of where you are in your life. Obviously, the classic one goes there. As much as I like this, we've heard him more as Adam as we have, and then He-Man. But for me, with Cam Clark, he does 2 different voices,
Mm,
because he voices a very young teenager, and then he voices a very muscly bound man,
mm,
whereas as much as Chris Wood is good, and that's one thing that I absolutely adore about this um, version, is just the voice casting, which we'll touch on in a minute. But I want to see more of him as He-Man, because we've only
mhm.
seen kind of snippets of him. So I think in the last 5 that's wherever we're going to see it, because it's like with mainly things fantasy and sci-fi, somebody who's dead isn't really dead. um but I think it's too early to tell. It's like you watching your new Star Wars movie and then asking where does it rank in your top 10, top 9
Mm.
list. No, 11, sorry. But it's too early for me to tell. Ask me that again once the other 5 have come out, and then I'll be able to give you a more definitive answer. But we've only given half his story. We haven't been given the full story of his, and that's an easy way of getting to that. But
Very
they've all
good
been
way of
great.
getting.
They've all been great at their own. You've just got different people passing the torch, and you've had different people voicing various characters who we know and love. Like Larry Kenny, who I know you've got an interview with, and that'll be interesting to hear. Because he's voiced so many different great people, and other people have voiced a Lion-O after he's voiced it, and what have you. But they're all great in their own way, shape, and form. But it's too early to tell.
You notice there we were very selective about who we picked. John Owen from '83, Cam Clark from 2000X, and Chris Wood. No mention of the New Adventures.
No, no. Well, it's a case of we're just kind of copying those 3, to make it a little easier.
Yeah. We'll just we forget about New
Yeah.
Adventures for a bit.
Yeah.
For a bit. The other good thing about the Adam He-Man character was, bear in mind the original series, Adam was He-Man. Same build,
Hmm.
same
Yeah.
definition. Whereas even in 2002 and now is what you would expect, substantially different Adam
Yeah.
compared to He-Man. I would say more in the 2000X series than you do in this one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, I think with that there, obviously we had more of a backstory of Adam, like with him getting the power, and then it's kind of like with Spider-Man, we've seen once
Yeah.
how he gets his powers. Twice, we don't need to see it a third time. And the first time, obviously, we were introduced to it. The second time, we kind of got a three-parter to do with that. And this time is kind of, we know the majority of people watching this are fan of the original ones and have probably seen this one, but not really acknowledge that 2001, because they go 40 years, because they've said this is kind of like a continuation of the Filmation one, and that's why we kind of don't have that. But the character design of him is really, really good. And again, I think it's the people who have done the Castlevania series, which is something I haven't watched, but the animation is just, it's so vibrant, which I haven't started watching yet.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the Castlevania series. Just going back to that, I've seen that, and whether or not they use the same animators for it, I don't know. But it was magnifique, monsieur.
Okay.
Absolutely tremendous. I would really recommend you see that. If you like the Castlevania games,
Oh yeah.
watch it. Really good, really violent as well.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about the voice cast, because we teased it in the episode we did about the 2000X series, about who was coming in. Let's talk about them in more detail. So let's kick off with Teela, Sarah Michelle Gellar. Undeniably one of the leads for this first half of the season. Her and Evil Lynn, I would say, were equal weighting at the moment. Different look to Teela with the shaved head down the one side, kind of giving her a much more of a rogue sort of what would you call it? Rogue sort of look.
I think it was more a case of with her then leaving the Royal Guard, because we had her in her traditional garb there, and then whenever she left, she kind of changed her outlook on life and then changed her hair to do with that. So I think it was kind of a case of she wanted to look different from what she
Freshed up.
did back then. Like it was kind of a case of, right, I don't need to have all this, and I'll just do that. So
what did you think of Michelle Gellar playing Teela?
she was good. I think out of all the people who voiced their characters, this was the one that I kind of struggled with the most at the start, because obviously watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I'm currently watching through now and on to season 4 after watching this, so it's one of those things that whenever she says "for Eternia," and you're like, oh, that it didn't, I don't know why, but it just didn't sound right. But the more you listen to her, the more I enjoyed her work. But for me, there was somebody who we'll touch on in a minute. There was 2 people that for me were the outstanding pieces of the puzzle for the voice actors, and she did great. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the other 5 episodes, because, like everything, it's kind of difficult to get used to people voicing certain characters, and this was the most at first jarring one for me. But the other ones were all fine.
I think she morphed into the character by the end of the 5 episodes. You could
Yeah,
see she was more
yeah.
comfortable. In the pilot, you could tell she was still a bit, I don't know where to go with this. But by the
Hmm.
time, episode 2 kicked in, she was a bit more in her skin. By the time episode 3 came around, by the time we got to episode 5, she knew who Attila was. And that must be difficult because when I first heard her, I'm going to be honest, I didn't even recognize it being Sarah Michelle Gellar the first time. I knew it
The only
was.
way, the only way I kind of recognized was because she did a voice in Rebels, I think it was. She was one of the Inquisitors. And obviously Freddie Prinze Jr., her husband, was then a voice actor in that as well. But yeah, it was one of those ones that as soon as I first heard, I knew. But there were some other ones. There's
Yeah,
one in particular I'll touch on that every time I heard the voice, I thought that just sounds like somebody totally different. And as soon as I say it, you'll be like, oh, now I get where you're coming from.
I think I think I know where you're going with that character. I think.
Okay.
I think I've got an idea because there's been a critique of this one character, but we'll talk about it in a second. Let's move on to Liam Cunningham, who played Duncan and Man at Arms. I mean, he is a renowned actor in
Hmm.
his own right. Liam Cunningham from amongst many things, Game of Thrones. Did he bring something different to the Man at Arms character?
This is the one that for me, every time I heard, kept thinking it was Liam Neeson.
Really, because of the Irish?
Yeah, but I
I'm
don't
not
think
taking that because you're.
no, no, no. I think because he is from down south, if I'm right, and Liam Neeson's from Northern Ireland. So, it's just whenever I heard it, if Man at Arms was to say, I've got a particular set of skills, I'd be like, that just sounds a spit of Liam Neeson, you know. But um, again, it was one of those voices that just fit that character perfectly, was because it sounded like he was had like an old wise voice, which
Yeah.
obviously Man at Arms. Obviously, the reason why they get him is because they want them to forge this two swords together, etc. But it's just one of those things that whenever I heard him, I was just like, that just fits that character perfectly, especially whenever he's caring for a little person. And you could just tell that he is kind of emotionally, he's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi. Is I keep doing these
Mhm.
Star Wars references and they're unintentional, but he's
It's fun.
kind of gone away from what he knew and what was his life, and now he's kind of just by like just caring for looking after somebody else. It's kind of Obi-Wan was looking after Luke without really knowing, and yeah, and then just being the wise person that we knew. The only thing was
Mm.
that whenever there was one scene towards the end, whenever he was on top of Castle Grayskull and he had like his bazooka thing, but he sees Adam, and then he comes down to greet Tila, and then Adam's there. And Adam is like, "You just saw him, and it's like right down there. Like we see it on screen, and Adam's right there. How you didn't see that? I don't
His,
know.
his eyesight's going because he's getting old.
Yeah, I
That's
think so. Yeah. Yeah.
now the next one for me was quite possibly take Mark Hamill out of it, and we'll talk about Hamill in a second.
Yeah.
This one I think was MVP of the show. Lena
You're going to
Headey,
say,
Evil
yeah,
Lynn.
I would say exactly the same. Like even when whenever she says the B word in it, which one I'll say, but whenever she said that, I just laughed. But yeah, for me, she was like by far the one that really exceeded my expectations.
Yeah.
It was just so good, and she obviously, obviously again, like Liam coming in, and we know her for playing Cersei, cold-hearted, so and so from Game of Thrones, and this was no exception. And I think she just channeled her inner Cersei to do that. Like apparently I remember reading an interview from her whenever somebody went up to her at a convention and basically said to her what she thought of her, and then somebody said like, "How do you take to that. Like, well, like, oh, that means I'm playing a character well if somebody says
Yeah.
that to me. And especially in here, whenever we see the kind of, going from evil to, I was just Lynn, I added the evil part myself, which I thought was funny. But it just, she seemed to be the one as well that brought the more humor to the side of it, in my estimation. But I just really enjoyed her as the character. And for me, like, I think that is the voice, that and Mark Hamill obviously are the two voices that were very, very hard to beat, to be honest. But she was just
For,
exceptional.
for me, it was that one line in the finale where she went, "Shame, I was just beginning to like you kids."
Yeah.
And then yeah, I think I even messaged you after we saw it
Yeah.
and just went, "That was line of the show for me."
Hmm.
It just really was, because I actually begun to like Evelyn throughout the 5 episodes. You could see the frost
Yeah.
diminishing, especially
I
the scenes with
think
Orko.
I think that whenever you watch it and she's with them, you kind of forget that she's evil. So by the
Yeah,
time what happens at the end happens, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot like it was going to we were going to get the bait and switch as it was. But we
right.
were
That's
going to get her going from that, But yeah, I just
it,
really
it.
enjoyed her portrayal as
It's like
Evelyn.
when she says to Orko, and they're talking about names, and she said, "No, my parents did not call me Evil Lynn."
Yeah, yeah.
It, brilliant. Let's move on to Orko then. So Griffin Newman portrayed the lovable, magical Orko, who was pretty sick throughout the series.
Yes, yeah. I thought you meant pretty sick as and he did a good job, but yes, I get what you mean because of the whole magic diminishing. That's why Man at Arms is looking after him. And yeah, he did a great job as Orko because obviously we've had in the 83 series, 83 series, we had Orko was more the one that the kids could kind of latch onto, and he would be the reason, like, oh, this is happening because of this. So he's basically
Mm.
the bridge to the kids to say, why is this happening? But again, he was great, and whenever he said something to do with like you said, like the Man at Arms, going like, oh, do you have many emotions? And I'm like, oh dear. But yeah, but then obviously we hear him being saying that he couldn't say his name Oracle right, so that's why they called him Orko. And then obviously we see him and Scareglow facing off, and then Orko actually dying, which is kind of a first for us. That obviously we'd seen the characters of He-Man and Skeletor die, Mossman die, which again was a bit of a shocker. But I think his was the most impactful death for a lot of people. Um, and just the way he was saying that, like, like it's okay, I'm all right, and
Mm.
kind of, like it seemed to be every time somebody looked over their shoulder, that's whenever. So if anyone in the next 5 episodes looks over their shoulder, watch out because they might die, So,
And
but yeah,
apparently, Kevin Smith has said that is staying. That is a death. Orko's not
right,
back.
okay, yeah,
He's
oh
not
yeah,
coming back.
no, yeah, yeah. So
Were you
look,
surprised they did kill him off though? Because he was such a fundamental part of the of the classic series.
I think it's one of those things that you don't see coming. It's a case of like whenever Brock Lesnar is fighting Undertaker at WrestleMania 30, you don't think that Brock Lesnar is going to end the streak, so you don't care. You're like,
Yeah,
no, I know it's in safe hands. So whenever he's fighting Scarecrow, you're like, oh, that's he'll be fine. And then whenever he then poof, and then you just see like the thing with his mask filter through. You're like, oh. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of felt a bit emotional about it because again, this is a character I've known for like 40 odd years. I never seen him die before because obviously we didn't see him ending up in pre-Eternia, wherever we see the likes of Adam and Mossman and stuff, he's not there. So whether he's went to fallen heaven or whatever.
possibly.
But yeah, yeah. But it's just one of those things that it was well done as well because he's not going against somebody very weak or he's not doing stupid little spell where he's trying to put them in a bubble or whatever. But like he's against Scareglow, who seems to be getting stronger and stronger. But I just really enjoyed the fact that even in the first 3 episodes, we had we'll probably see Orko again in the likes of flashbacks and things like that, like we have with He-Man, and then we've seen obviously other characters in flashbacks, the likes of Whiplash, who weren't part of this.
Yep.
So even though he's not coming back, I have a funny feeling we'll see him again.
I mean, for me, it was a character coming full circle. So Orko was the first ever action figure I got.
Oh, right, okay.
So for me, I always loved Little Orko. He was always like the little, regardless of He-Man and stuff, it was always Little Orko, and he used to pull his thing and he used to whirl across the table.
Yeah.
This string, yeah. So I was a bit, oh, okay, they've killed Orko off. Yeah, he was always a bit of a joke character, but I like that. But I thought what they did with the character, like you said, was unexpected, but it made the whole Orko character feel worthwhile. There was a payoff for it. He wasn't just playing the jester. And the fact that he sacrificed himself to protect the Eternians, to get into pre-Eternia, to get the magic back, was the ultimate sacrifice, and really living up to what his parents thought he would be as Oracle, back on Troll World. So I thought it was brilliant. I want to touch very quickly on Cringer, Stephen Root. So we know in the 2000X series, we didn't have a talking Cringer. They made that decision to take the voice away. In the 83 series, in the classic, he was talking in a very different style Cringer than what we've got in the 2021 series. What did you make of it?
Oh, Cringer seemed to be the one that was Cringer was a character that you expected to be somebody like in the first episode, wherever he's saying about the fireworks, and then Man-at-Arms and went, yeah, you don't know what a battle is, we haven't seen Battle Cat, and you're like, oh yeah, that's funny. And he's like whenever they're playing the music and too loud, and that's a Cringer we know. But this Cringer grew up an awful lot, to protecting the sorceress, to whenever Tila was about to do something and he comes in and goes like, no, don't be doing that. And whenever he says, like, again, the two characters that were probably the most comic relief in the original ones, like you said, came full circle, because that speech that Cringer gives to Tila about, whenever he was naming her and things like that, and said, about, the magic of Grayskull and what have you. And then whenever Tila then rubs Cringer's head and says, like, good kitty, I think that was one thing that Kevin Smith was really especially proud of, was the likes of Cringer and how much his speech as well was given to Tila. And like I say, we don't know if Battle Cat talks or what Battle Cat sounds like, because we've only heard him roar in the Filmation one. Obviously we'd heard him talk a fair bit, but it was normally just growls. And then, like you say, in the 2002 one, we never heard him talk at all. So I'm interested to see if we get He-Man back, will we get Battle Cat in more of a talkative thing. But I think, again, he was one that his voice was very soft, which fitted Cringer. It wasn't a big gruff voice. It was a very soft, calming voice. And I think that he did the voice brilliantly for Cringer. And really, I think Cringer was a character that tugged at my heartstrings more than any other character did.
I loved Cringer. I mean, Cringer was always one of my favorites in the classic series, but I'm going to be a bit controversial again. I hope that if we do see more Battle Cat, we don't have Battle Cat talk.
Okay.
I think I like the idea of Cringer being, able to talk in a bit more not nervous or cowardly little Cringer like his namesake. And when he gets to Battle Cat, it's Battle Cat. I think I just want them to be different. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. I'm not known for my impressions. I kind of want them to be different. And I think having Battle Cat not talk, but be there with the power makes that difference. And Cringer's the voice of reason in my head. I think. Okay. I don't know. I'm going to be quiet now. Okay. four more voices that I really want to touch on, because the guest cast was fantastic. Of course, we had Jason Mewes as Stinkor, who made his debut in the cartoon. The character, the action figure, never materialized on the cartoon.
Yeah,
Except
2002 he did, but not the original one.
Not the original, which is, I think, if we're looking at this as a direct successor of the 83, that's what we've got to base on. So let's talk about the two cameo appearances, and one that I fell in love with because I thought it was such a nice throwback, that it was like the Optimus Prime returning to the Transformers franchise, and that's Alan Oppenheimer coming in as Mossman.
Again, whenever we first see Mossman and with Skeletor, and then him just whenever Skeletor just has the fire, and then he goes, and then the one of the best lines was "smells like pine," because the character of the figure smelled like pine. That was what he's meant to smell like. But him just saying that, and I was just like, oh well, Alan Oppenheimer didn't have much, and then obviously in episode 5 or 4, whatever it was, we have more of him talking to Adam. But again, I think it was just a really nice touch, because Alan Oppenheimer is so still involved with the He-Man universe and still goes to conventions and things like that. And I think it was nice for them to maybe say to him, like, do you want to do a voice? But, just do, like your normal voice. Again, like Man at Arms, you could tell it was a very wow.
But yeah, I think just going back to that, it was really like Larry Kenny. When you mentioned Larry Kenny earlier on about being in Thundercats and playing a different version of Lion-O and playing Jaga and playing Claudius in the series, to bring Oppenheimer back into this reboot, playing a different character but still keeping the lineage of having Alan Oppenheimer involved as a fan was amazing. The other one to pick up on before we touch on the other two that I want to pick up on, Kevin Conroy as Merman, finally on the same side as Mark Hamill, playing bad guys.
Yeah. His was one that for me was like, I was like, who voiced him again? Like him and Beastman. Beastman was Kevin Michael Richardson, who voiced, I think he did Shredder in the 2002 reboot, or sorry, the 2012 reboot of Turtles. And obviously he's prolific for everything else that he's done. And I think he's done the Joker voice as well as Mark Hamill, so he's on the same side as someone who voiced the Joker. But I think of the two, of Kevin Conroy and Kevin Michael Richardson, obviously Beastman was more in it. But focused. I think Merman, from what we'd seen, whenever they were on the boat, and then he has like an eye missing as well. It's like, oh, this is good merchandise idea, because you're going to bring out a variant of Merman with an eye missing. But yeah, it was just very, very calm and totally different to any Merman we've had, because normally the Merman would have, and we'd have like the bubbling, like to say that he's underwater. But with him,
do that again?
No, I don't want to. Neither Andy or I are prolific voice actors. But with his, it was very mellow and very, you could tell there was no messing with Merman. But I enjoyed it for what it was. Again, not one that we had too much of, to be honest. I think the villains were the one villain in particular who I just was very baffled by what happened to was Triclops.
I love that.
I was so baffled by that. I was just like, especially the thing on his head and stuff. I was like, all right, I understand this, but at the same time, why do we have to have this kind of motherboard cult thing? Which there's actually a track on this, which is to do with the mighty motherboard of Triclops.
It was the most out there, and we're talking about a show about a man who turns in from a teenager to a powerful being with magic. It was the most out there plot of the lot. Suddenly seeing them embrace digital, where they've never actually mentioned anything about digital technology before. It's all been, like the visionaries going backwards from technology into magic. But Triclops, I thought they did a really good job giving him center light, because again, Merman, Triclops, Stinkor, Mossman, Beastman didn't ever really get a lot of character development in the original series. Stinkor, we know, didn't. And it was always about the good guys. Whereas this season, it seems to be that the villains and the good guys and the villains, the faces of the heels, if you want to take it to a wrestling stage, are equal. They're both on one set course to stop the magic from disappearing at Eternia. And that has been a really unique perspective to look at.
It was one of those things like with Alicia Silverstone as Marlena was one that I was just like, really? And then whenever you heard it, she was one that I again had to look up. I was like, oh, yeah, it
Yep.
was her that did that. So, but yeah, but I kind of, that for me was the most kind of out of sync part of that. So whenever you see them, obviously I understand the part wherever the Beastman then attacks Triclops and go like, nobody hurts her, and I like the fact that he is with Evil Lynn, and then at the end, whenever Beastman walks up to Skeletor, I'm like, good to have you back, boss or sir or whatever he says, and it's just like,
Oh,
all
it's
right, you can
tremendous.
see, so, but yeah, but I'm just interested to see with the other 5 episodes if we're going to get different villains now, or are we going to just stick with, say, Triclops, whether he tries to mount an offense to Skeletor or something, or whether we're going to see any other newer characters, because we still have a plethora of villains and heroes that we haven't seen, like some Manny Faces a Cyclone, which I hope come in. And then I think his daughter Harley Quinn Smith is voicing Elena in one of the episodes, so I think it's maybe the next episode that she's in.
I think I kind of hope they don't, because I really want a second series. So don't want to peak too soon and give too much out in the next 5
Yeah,
episodes, because
I think as well with
stagger it out a bit.
yeah, I think that they'll do something. They'll maybe introduce a character or two, so that way,
Yeah.
because obviously the big thing they'll have to think of is merch sales, and they'll have to think, what can I think of to do with merchandise and
Well,
stuff. So
we know on the hero side, we're 2 characters down anyway, so we can have 2 new characters
yeah,
introduced, because we've lost Roboto and we lost Orko. So
mm-hmm.
we can have 2 new ones there. Last couple of character actors, because these are Tony Todd played Scareglow. What did you think of the Scareglow character, Skeletor, basically in the underworld?
Again, this was a character that we'd never seen in any way, shape, or form in any cartoon. We'd only seen it like kind of in the mini comics, and this was kind of, I think Skeletor summoned him from another dimension, and he came in, and there was a lot of things that this was. I think this was meant to be Skeletor in another dimension or something like that. But he was one that, as this as the episode went on, I've never been a fan of horror, so I think if you're a horror fan, you'll appreciate this one more. But again, the voice just sat well with it, and then again, it's a very he seems to have one, obviously when being in horror, he has one of those haunting. So I think that haunting voice goes well for a character called Scareglow, who's kind of prey on everyone's fears and things like that. Although I don't understand why Orko's fear was being back to Trolla, but there we
I
go.
think it was his fear of his parents not accepting him
Yeah,
for what he was. I think that's
probably
I think
true.
that's what it was. Right, let's talk about a new character. So we've got a brand new character. Comic material, never been seen on TV before, no real backstory. Andra, played by Tiffany Smith, the partner in crime, if you will, to Teela. What did you make of her?
I always enjoy whenever you have a character that isn't really fleshed out or anything, like that you don't know anything of. So whenever I, like was looking up the voices and then her character came up, I was like, I don't recognize that character's name. And then you see that character there. And it was one of those ones that I was like, oh, right, okay. So whenever, as the episodes go on, her character becomes more and more centric, like especially whenever Skeletor in episode 5 says to her, go like, you've asked a question, my dear, I'm just going to give an answer, and then it goes right up to her face. And I think she voiced it terrifically. I think it's a character that now, because let's be honest, there hasn't been a really good representation for all cultures in Master of the Universe. Obviously, in the trailer, we saw Clamp Champ and Fisto, but we didn't really see. So whether those two will come into the forefront of the last 5 episodes, but this is a great representation for any young black women, like, and they will have somebody strong to, because she was a strong character, and her and Tila were great together, especially whenever they go into Triclops's meeting thing to try and blow it up, and I thought that was good. And then
Well,
also, did you ever watch 24, by the way?
yeah.
I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy who played President Palmer was the guy who voiced King Grayskull. I didn't know that until, again, I looked it up.
Oh,
Yeah,
I didn't know that either.
yeah.
Blimey.
So there you go. So that's another
Dennis
Master
Hathaway.
Universe voice. Dennis, yeah. So he's the one who voiced King Grayskull again, who was in the 2002 show, and then they've made him black in this one, which is perfectly
Yeah.
fine. It's not one of those
What
things
do you
that
think
you
about
need
the
to.
fan? What do you think about the fan theory where they're saying that Andra is going to become the next He Woman, if you will?
Well, is this any different from the new Thor movie, wherever Thor is going to be Natalie Portman? There seems to be a lot,
Exactly.
with a lot of comics now, Iron Man is, a woman.
Ironheart.
If, we've got Natalie Portman back as Jane Foster, and I believe the story there is that she has cancer or something, and this is the only way she can kind of keep that at bay. So she's going to have Mjolnir, or Jonathan, as Paula calls it. Um, but with that there, I don't think that that's going to happen. Obviously, Tila's destined to become the sorceress, and but whether she then becomes the man at arms, that's what I see happening. I think that
Mm.
Tila will say that she doesn't want that position anymore, and then Andra will be given that, and then because she's never been a part of something, then she'll be a part of the Eternia family. That's what I see happening. I can't see them changing He-Man to any other character than He-Man, because that's all we've known. Obviously, we've seen the pre-Eternians, the likes of Hero, which was meant to be the next toy line after the original ones, and then obviously the one wearing the black vest was Wondar, who was then in the classic ones, and there was another one, and then obviously you had King Grayskull, who we knew about, but um, I don't see them doing that. If they do it, great, but I honestly don't see them doing that, because the way they look at it is that if they decide to go that route, you'll have maybe her maybe crossing over with the Shira universe if they do that, and then maybe you'll see her becoming the next Shira instead of the next He
But
Woman,
the
because
problem with that though is that Mattel don't have the rights to She-Ra. That's with DreamWorks.
yeah, so whether it's a case of whether they wait until like the that runs out and then they get that back or something like
Yeah.
that, or whether they do a Marvels and Sony, cross thing with Spider-Man, because I believe that the person in charge of doing the DreamWorks one had said that they would love to cross over the He-Man for like a Christmas special, which would
Oh God,
be
no.
very weird. Yeah, yeah, that would be very weird. But it's just something that, whatever happens, happens. And if you don't like it, you don't need to send death threats to people. That's never going to solve anything.
God, I love
And
fans.
yeah, you really do. But it's just one of those things that if it happens, I can't see it change, because it's not going to be He Man then, it's going to be a woman. And if it happens, like whatever way they want to do it, that's fine. We never thought we'd see Skeletor becoming Skelly God, but there we go.
Well, we did in 1987 when he got the power.
Oh
He,
well, yeah, that's true.
he did effectively
That's
become Skelly God, but I get what you mean. Speaking of which, great segue into Skeletor himself, the legendary Mark Hamill portraying that character, which it was the Joker, right? It was the Joker's voice. That's what he brought to the table.
Yeah, because you could try to hear the laugh differently, but whenever you heard the laugh, you still felt the Joker.
Yeah,
You never. That's the thing. It's so surreal that whenever you think Mark Hamill, you immediately think Luke Skywalker, but you don't get any iota of Luke Skywalker in
no.
this at all. Um, it's certainly a different take on Skeletor, but he's again very glib with what he says, and it's just, even whenever he says "call your champion," like you can really see that he accentuates it's "call your champion," because of the way his teeth are and the fact he's no flesh and stuff. But I really enjoyed it, and I knew that going into it, I'd be like, right, well, if anyone's listened or heard anything to do with Mark Hamill as a Joker, that's kind of what you're going to hear in this.
Mm.
By the first episode I did, by the fifth episode, I was like, like whenever he's talking to Evelyn about putting some different finishing on the table or on the boat, and you're like, what? But I thought he was brilliant, and it was great to see. Did you watch that after cast thing or
Yeah,
whatever it's called? Like,
yeah.
and it was great to see him and Lena Headey in the studio pre-COVID recording it. And I always love to see things like that whenever actors are actually putting down the voice for the role. And I think he's just a name that brings so much credibility to the show as well, with him being such a versatile voice actor as well.
Well, funny you should talk about that, because in the interview coming up with Larry Kenny, where we talk about Thundercats, we talk about how you become a voice actor and what it's like being in the booth compared to not being in the booth like you do now, COVID era. So we talk about that in that interview with Larry
Okay,
Kenny. Bit of an
cool.
exclusive for you right there.
I look
Right
forward to
there.
listening to that.
So we've talked about the voice cast. We've talked about the show itself. Where does it sit? Are you thinking there's going to be a second season? Do you think the fan support are there? I mean, the Rotten Tomatoes got bombed with fan reviews, with 33% giving it a positive review, 77% giving it a negative because of the bait and switch of He-Man. How do I put this? Are He-Man fans sacrificing the franchise because it doesn't have He-Man in it? And actually, did you miss He-Man? Because I got to admit, over the 5 episodes, I didn't really miss having the character front and center because of the change of the format, because it going episodic, because it being a continuous story. I didn't miss it. You knew he was going to come back by the end of it. The minute they went to pre-Eternia in episode 4, you knew he was going to come back. What I loved was the blatant injuring Adam again at the end of season 5 and leaving that cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Did you need He-Man in the show every episode?
Again, this is another Star Wars reference. So many, many years after we had Revenge of the Sith, some 10 years later, we then have Force Awakens. How many of the characters in that are at the forefront? We have the likes of Han Solo, Chewbacca, and Princess Leia. We don't see Luke Skywalker until the very, very end of that. But still, people were like, oh, that's, it's just a copy of episode 4. And I think that's the culture, the cancel culture that we're in nowadays, where people don't like something, they want to cancel it. I think it's maybe people who, I think the more, I don't want to say diehard, but the people who grew up with the property probably appreciate it more than people who just wanted to watch it because, like, oh, this looks good or whatever. But don't forget that whenever you watch the Transformers movie, Optimus Prime dies in it. Same way that with that new show, the one that's on Netflix, the one that has like 3 different, like War for Cybertron, I think it's called.
Yes, the Prime trilogy.
I
the
think
War for Cybertron.
Yeah, I think with that, Optimus Prime dies in that as well. So there's a lot of characters that you knew in that which aren't in the show as much. Even the Transformers Prime, straight off the bat, The Rock voices Roadblock or something like that, and he dies like that. So it does happen, and it's one of those things that obviously, like we've said, he's not truly dead, because even Kevin Smith says the He-Man and Skeletor fight in the later part, so you know that He-Man's going to come back, so it's just one of those things that I think fans are just too quick to judge things. We judge things now. How many people are judging the Ghostbusters Afterlife movie based on a 2-minute trailer? Where's the comedy going to be? I mean, you're judging an hour-and-a-half movie on 2 minutes, and that's the thing that people are doing now. I mean, there was a lot of hype to do with the trailer, and that's great. And we had the fight, between He-Man and Skeletor, which still happened. It's not a case of they decided to then just remove He-Man completely. We still had little snippets of He-Man in some of the episodes, like whenever she's talking to Andrea about what he said, and whether he really said that, and you're like, okay. But like it's one of those things that it's a different person's take on something. It's like somebody else picking up the pen for Harry Potter and writing a different script, a different book to do with Harry Potter, and maybe killing off Ron Weasley or something like that.
Oh, kill off Ron Weasley, please kill off Ron Weasley. So
See,
where do you?
you can't say that because then people think I was thinking of gingers or something.
Oh, for God's sake, kill off all of them. Don't do it again. Where do you think the next 5 episodes are going to go?
Oh, flip. Gosh, that's a tough one. There's going to have to be a different kind of way for He-Man to come back. Adam's not going to truly die, and whether it's going to be like another power sword or something like that. Obviously, Roboto doesn't have that, but Duncan knows how to craft one. So whether they are able to get another 2 parts, I don't know. I think that Tila will become the sorceress by the end of this.
Yeah.
This is going to be very much like where we are now with like the Avengers and stuff. A lot of the older ones are going to make way for like newer ones. So we may not see, if we get a season 2, we may not see Duncan as much. We may not see Evelyn as much. We may get other characters, or whether they bring in newer characters. That may be where, again, the merch sales lie, is that they'll maybe introduce somebody that we've never heard of. We may have a villain that we've never heard of. I don't know, so
Oh,
it's just one of those things that I enjoyed what I watched, and I'm excited to see. I know that they've done 3 of the 5 episodes, and I think
mhm.
Bear McCreary has just finished recording the music for that, and I think they just need to do the special effects or something for it. So I think it's near done. So it'd be interesting to see if we're going to get it later this year or get it at the start of next year. But
My guess would be later this year because they've already announced Cobra Kai coming back in
yeah,
December, season 4 of
yeah,
season 4 of
so
Cobra
excited for
Kai.
that. Yeah.
So I would imagine they would want to capitalize on the buzz, and the buzz has been 30 odd years we've waited for a traditional follow up to Masters, and we've got one. Whether you love it or you hate it. I just want to go back to the title just for a minute because I was thinking something there while you were talking. Everybody's got this uproar about it being called Master of the Universe and not He-Man in the Master of the Universe. The 2002 series, that was called Master of the Universe, right?
No, it was He-Man and the Master
Oh, it was
Universe.
He-Man and the Master of the Universe. Oh,
Yeah.
right. I stand corrected. I stand very
I
correct.
can see the DVD. I thought that myself, but it is called that. So
Oh,
yes,
okay.
but you
All
just
right. Well,
had a
maybe.
revelation there that it wasn't. But you see, that's the thing, is that we're getting a revelation of what happens. This is the most. We've never seen characters die before. We've seen them get injured and stuff, but we've never seen characters die before. So, with the next 5 episodes, be prepared because your favorite characters may not survive. I think Adam will be okay, but I think this will be where he goes back to the palace and he's injured, and Tila takes him back there and he gets cared for and stuff, and then this will be where we have the first father and son talk of him knowing that Adam is He-Man, because obviously we had the talk of Tila knowing that he was He-Man at the very end, but we've never had that father-son talk. I think in the Filmation one, Marlena knew that he was He-Man, but never let on to Adam
Yeah.
that she knew. I think in one of the episodes that she said, "Oh, how do you think I know these things?" or whatever, and there was an episode, I think it was Prince Adam No More, wherever He-Man's fighting with Randor, and then he says something to go like, Randor says, "I've got my trusted left hook," and Adam says to Randor about the trusted left hook, and he went, "What, really?" And I went, "No, it couldn't be." So I think we're going to have that.
It's mother's intuition, if you
Yes,
will.
exactly.
I,
Yeah.
I'm expecting at the end of the season, and don't laugh, that something is going to happen. And to protect Grayskull and the magic and Eternia, there's going to be this snap of the fingers, a bit like the Thanos snap, and everything will be reset. So Orko will be back from the dead. Roboto will be back from the dead. The show will be called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And it'll just be reset. And we'll start again. And it'll go back to 80 stock animation. That's what I think will happen.
Okay. You keep taking those pills and
Yeah,
you keep
I
living
need
in
some.
dreamland and stuff,
I need
it's very
some.
much again like in Star Wars, to do with people thinking now that there's going to be this different theory where the last 3 films, what happened in the mirror universe and all this here, and you're like, oh, they're part of it, just accept it. You writing all this stuff isn't going to change anything. If you enjoyed it, great. If you didn't enjoy it, you watched it, you made feedback about it, but you don't need to critique other people if they enjoyed it. Like whenever I posted about the CD, somebody had said you wouldn't pay me to take anything Master Universe Revelation. I was like, well, just as well, I'm not
Don't
giving
they?
it to you for free, or
Yeah.
like if you don't want to, that's your right not to. If I want to, that's my right to. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right then. So that's Master of the Universe Revelation. Chris, before we go, we are in the midst of the
mhm.
Ultimate Kids Cartoon Tournament. 48 shows, 24 matches, one winner. Now, last week, we launched the tournament with the Banana Man versus the Muppets. And I got slated for this because it was the Muppets, who are not a kids' cartoon show. So that's including the Muppet Babies. Now, okay, that got me out of that. Yeah, that
Okay.
got me out of that. So I can announce the winner and advancing to the quarterfinals, to the second round, is the Muppets / Muppet Babies. They beat Banana Man, 72% to 18% was the overall result.
Per Eric, who lives in 34 Acacia Road or whatever it was.
I know, I know. So that brings me on, with you being here, to our next match. He-Man and the
Oh,
Masters of the Universe, the original,
jeez. Wow.
against the Looney Tunes.
As much as I love Looney Tunes, like it has to be He-Man. Like obviously on my Instagram, Vinto's Vault, if you want to follow me there, you can do. I just posted the last week of like Looney Tunes of DVD sets that I have, and I've always had a soft spot for Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, or Elmer Fudd, but how He-Man, I think Looney Tunes should have been picked against Disney characters like Mickey Mouse and etc. But
Not my fault.
that's just the way that's the way the bracket fell. So
It's a,
He-Man for me is always has been a cartoon that I can go back to and watch at any stage. It's been a reason why I got into podcasting, was to do He-Man. I've met so many great friends through He-Man. I've watched moral episodes of things to do with He-Man. But yes, He-Man has always been a cartoon that I've enjoyed, and obviously it gets a lot of people saying, like, oh, it's a great, gay pride and all this here. And so, like, look, it's an 80s cartoon. It's just one of those things that it has no other conception around it. It's just that. Just watch it for that. It doesn't have any other hidden meaning behind it. And that's another thing that we have so many things these days, But yes, for me, He-Man and Master Universe would throw Bugs Bunny and friends into a tar swamp where they would sit for a while.
okay. So that's I knew that was going to be a clear one, and I'm expecting He-Man to beat Bugs. So let's go through a couple of the others, because Larry Kenny is going to be joining us soon, and I posed the same question to Larry Kenny. She-Ra, Princess of Power, against the Silverhawks.
Well, you see, I think Dan had said that he'd never seen Silverhawks,
I know.
and I am the same.
Sorry, what?
I've never seen Silverhawks. I know of it from interviewing Larry Kenny myself, and he talked about Silverhawks, but it's not a cartoon that I've ever watched.
It's part of the Rankin Bass trilogy.
Yeah, you see, Rankin Bass. Every time I say that, I think Baskin Robbins. For some reason, I think they make ice cream.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I know of it, but I've never watched it. It maybe have to be something that I track down and see if I can find a DVD of and say. But obviously, She-Ra, Princess of Power, has been the follow-on to He-Man, because they noticed that they were selling so many figures of Tila that she became one of the most popular figures. But I think because he had to buy one for boy and one for the girl, and that's why they did that. But again, we covered Secret of the Sword in this. Well, basically we covered it. Whether we talked about it that much, I don't really know. We did. But that was just his finer feat. But She-Ra, Prince of the Power, is one that I, again, have enjoyed watching, and the voice casting there, the likes of Melanie Britt voicing She-Ra, etc., is second to none. But I would have to lean towards She-Ra, because I've never seen Silverhawks before, and I can't put a show I've never seen before against She-Ra. So,
well, Silverhawks, there are episodes available on YouTube for free that you can watch. So try and educate yourself, Chris. Watch Silverhawks, the second part of the trilogy of Rankin Bass, which kind of goes with the first part of the trilogy of Rankin Bass. It's the Biker Mice from Mars versus the Thundercats. It looks like Lionel's
Wow.
punching you in the chin here.
Ugh. It's a real cat and mouse game, this one. Whew,
Oh,
which was quite cleverly done. Biker Mice from Mars, obviously I remember from for the intro and stuff, which was great. But the Thundercats again, the outtakes of that are just hilarious, and it just one that again really encapsulates my childhood. The whole getting the figures, the whole just universe of it, with them expanding. Even with the likes of Thundercats, Who the movie, which I always enjoyed and I had on VHS, like I did Secret of the Sword. So again, Thundercats for me would triumph over the Biker Mice from Mars. And as Panthro would say, I'm going to loosen some bones for you too. That's what he'd probably say to Biker Mice from
oi,
Mars.
oi, 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 oi,
I can
oi.
still not believe that the guy who voiced Panthro was the dad from the Cosby Show.
I know. It's
I
scary,
think
isn't it?
it baffles me that, but yeah, I just Thundercats is just one that even just the intro just gets you pumped up, and I really enjoyed the reboot of that in the 2002 2003 whenever it was. I really enjoyed
Yeah,
that too. So again, Michael Richardson voiced Panthro in that. So
he
there we
really
go.
did. He really did. I mean, it's a great way to end the show. So we're going to be putting all those brackets up on Twitter and on Instagram and on Facebook for you to vote. But we've got Chris's vote, we've got Larry Kenny's vote, we've got Dan's vote for some of those, including the Transformers versus DuckTales.
Now that's probably the toughest one. So it is.
I'm really
But
torn on this one because I love the Transformers, but I love DuckTales, the original. So I'm really
yeah,
torn.
I see. I quite enjoyed the reboot of because David Tennant voices Scrooge McDuck, and I love
Yeah.
the video. You see, that's probably the hardest one, but I would probably lean more to Transformers than I would DuckTales.
Funny enough, I think most people will, but this is the bracket. It's going to be released. We've got Defenders of the Earth, we've got the Galaxy Rangers in there, we've got Silverhawks, we've got you name it. It's there. So it's 48 shows. We're going to come down to a big final battle, and that final battle will be where we'll do a show with the final two, and we'll try and do some live voting. Chris, I'd love you to join me when we do the final show, the final showdown
I would,
between the winner of the left bracket and the winner of the right bracket, who will come out as the
unless
ultimate.
He-Man's at the end, or Lion-O, then I'm not attending.
Well,
I don't
He-Man
want to be in.
represents the original. I didn't put the 2000 in, and I definitely didn't put the New Adventures in. I thought you'd be a bit upset about
Boohoo. Yeah,
that.
I thought it was just like with the classic show is basically where it's at, and
That's it.
what. Yeah,
That's
so
it.
I'm interested to see who the Turtles will be against.
Well, we'll find out soon enough. Chris, before we wrap up, what last word, what would you call Revelation in one word?
Um, Polarizing.
Ooh, very good word. Very good word. Chris, always a pleasure. Stay on the line or stay on the video feed for me for a second. Thanks for bearing with us throughout this entire episode. What you don't know is it's had a lot of technical problems, and I'm going to be doing a lot of editing on this
Yay!
one. Excuse me. We are going to go out. We are going to go out on podcast with the theme from Revelation. You can't finish it any other way than going out with that music. Chris, you're going to be joining me soon, aren't you, for another show? What is the topic we're going to be covering on that next show?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think that the next show, because we've talked about cartoons a lot, we need to talk about something that isn't a cartoon. So I think that we should talk about the 80s classic that was reborn again, like something else in 2002, and that is the classic Or Wiedersehen Pet.
Or Theater's Own Pet? Let's do it. Jimmy Nail, all the way through. I cannot wait to talk about that.
I'll put
Chris,
on my
always,
crocodile shoes for that. They're crying too.
I'll just call the Dragons. Anyway, stay tuned. Stay tuned. Now, keep up to date with Chris on Twitter and on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram at Vintos Vault. And don't forget that Master of the Universe Chronicles is coming and still is on the Retro Chat podcast feed, on the classic feed. All of the great shows and interviews that Chris did back in the day are part of the Retro Chat feed and gaining some great feedback and great reviews. And my thanks to you, Chris, for giving us the exclusive home of the Chronicles for this generation of the audience.
Oh, well, you're very welcome, and thank you to people who are listening. Thank you for wanting to have it as part of your feed as well. So that always means a lot that people still want to listen to interviews, which are still, a bit older than they were back then. But it always appreciates any people listening to it and enjoying it as well. So thank you to anyone. And if you are enjoying it, then let Andy know.
Please do. Now, you can do that via social media, or please leave us a review on iTunes. Now, the only way we can up through the rankings is to have reviews. That gives us more premonition. That gives us more prevalence out there in the podcasting world. That means we can bring people on. So, with that in mind, I have a guest announcement.
Oh.
And it's not cartoon related.
Shocker.
It's not comedy series related. It is professional wrestling related. So joining us very soon will be the reigning and defending NWA World's Heavyweight Champion from the UK, the man formerly known as Brutus Magnus in Impact Wrestling and on Gladiators on Sky One. Nick Aldis will be joining us to talk all about the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, its reemergence, the 10 pounds of gold, and a whole lot more. So I cannot wait to bring Nick onto this show to talk all things NWA. So if you have a question for Nick through the social media, drop us a line, let us know, and we'll ask him on the show.
Great. I'm looking forward to that. And I will put my thinking cap on and think of something to ask Mr. Aldis.
Please do. Now, Larry Kenny will be joining us because we've done this as a bonus show this week. We were going to be doing the history of the Thundercats, but we thought we needed to get Revelations done because it's been out for a couple of weeks now, but everybody has had a chance to see it. So that's why we thought it was the right time to do it. Next week, Larry Kenny will be joining us for a special one-on-one interview that I did with Larry last week. Runs for about 45 minutes to an hour, depending like it. So I hope you sit down and enjoy that, because that will be part of our history of Thundercats special. We're going to be taking a look at what made the Thundercats successful, some of the highs, some of the lows, and a little bit more about the Ranking Bass trilogy that Chris knows nothing about. So Chris, it's a bit of education for you, because then one of the upcoming shows we're going to be doing is on the Silverhawks. So maybe I'll set you a challenge, and if you're free, you can come and join us on the Silverhawks episode.
Oh my!
Oh my! All right, George Takai. Also upcoming on the show is going to be Knight Rider 2008. Lee Tyers from Ministry of Slam is going to be joining me. We're going to be doing Ghostbusters and Baywatch with Lawrence Case. Dan Barnes is going to be joining me to do a few more things. And Steve Grieve from TWS will also be joining me as we do a legacy show on the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels.
Oh, good old Shawn Michaels.
Following on from the legacy of Owen Hart that we released last week, which has got some great feedback. Thank you so much for that. It was a pleasure to do that show. That's it from me. Chris, anything else to say before we wrap up?
Just as they always say, until next time.
You have the power. See you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.